In this video, we're going to put together our friends list. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be virtually exactly what we did in the last video, so with a couple of additional things I want to throw in. So pretty much I just want to go through and type out all this code. The one thing I do want to throw in is there is a feature of list views that allows the list views to show and hide a view that you specify if there are any items, or if there are not any items in that particular list view. So it's just one additional feature of a list view that I haven't gone over yet. So basically in this video, the sequence that we're going to go through is first we're going to put together the list item itself. So the list item layout for user details, then we'll put together the adapter, then we'll put together the layout for the fragment, and then we'll implement the fragment. So I guess let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to come down here to Resources, Layout, and I'm going to right-click, select New, Layout Resource File, and it's going to be list underscore item underscore user details. And he's going to be a linear layout. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating this linear layout for this user details list item, and user details will be repurposed for other reasons in the app. If you ever need to show a list of user details, you would use this list item. Just like usual, for a height, we're going to say wrap content. Our orientation will be horizontal, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a padding of 8 dp. Again, the padding, you might want to throw in a dimensions style resource. There might be an autocomplete thing that does that. Yeah, it does right there. If you want to do that, you can just put your keyboard cursor right on the 8dp, hit Alt Enter, then select Extract Dimensions Resource if you want to put it in an XML file, so you can control it in one place as opposed to have it repeated. Anyway, we'll start off with an image view, which will be 64 dp by 64 dp, and that's not how you spell dp. Let's fix that. And we'll give it an ID of list item user details avatar. So this is going to be very, very similar to the other thing that we had before. Our layout width and layout height for our text view is going to be wrap content. And then we're going to have a text of display name, so I can take a look at how it's being rendered. We'll give it an ID of list item user details display name. And we'll give it a margin start of 8 dp. I believe that's the one we did for the contact request, and it is 8 dp. 8 dp on the margin left. Yep, or margin start. And then for the rest of this text view, let's see, what else do we want here? Let's give it a text size of 14 sp, and then we'll give it a text style, or whoops, text size, not text style. And we'll give it a text style of bold, and we'll give it a text color of DE000000. So very similar to what we have before, kind of being consistent with our positioning. And finally, on the linear layout, I'm going to go ahead and give it a gravity, not a layout gravity, a normal gravity of center vertical. And that'll vertically center our display name with our image. So I think that looks fine. So let's move on to the next thing that we got to do. The next thing we got to do is put together our adapter. Adapter is going to be pretty straightforward. Let's open up our package. We're going to be opening up our views package because that's where I'm putting all my adapters. And then inside of views, we'll do new, and we'll say user details adapter. This is going to be virtually identical to our other adapter, so there's not a whole lot else to say about it. It'll inherit from array adapter of user details. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a private layout inflator, give it a public user details adapter that takes in a base activity, and we'll invoke super, passing an activity in 0, and then inflator, go away. Inflator equals activity.getLayout inflator. Then we'll go ahead and we'll create our view holder. So private class view holder. Our view holder will have a text view, display name, and a image view avatar. And it'll have a constructor. And its constructor will take in a view, and its display name will be set to text view, view, find view by ID, r.id, .display, import r, and then display name, we're going to be doing list item user details display name. Avatar is cast to image view, view, find view by ID, r.id, avatar, which will be list item user details avatar. Then we're going to go ahead and override our get view method. We do that by hitting Alt Insert, override member, get view. And for the get view, again, pretty much the exact same. We'll have a view holder view, and I'll say if convert view is null, then convert view equals inflator dot inflate r dot layout dot list item user details, passing in parent and false for its parameters. And let's go ahead and instantiate our view holder. So view equals new view holder, passing in convert view as its constructor parameter, and then convert view set tag view. And then on our else branch, we'll simply extract our view holder out of our convert view using its get tag method. Then the next thing is let's go ahead and extract our user details item. So I'm going to say user details details. Just to make this consistent with our other adapter, I can do this at the top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. Equals get item at position. So you could have this line of code wherever you want. I guess I can put it at the top or the bottom. Like I said, doesn't matter. But to make it consistent with how I did it before, we can put it at the top. Then we will set our display name. So we're going to go ahead and say view.displayname.setText details.get display name, and then we'll use Picasso. So I'm going to say Picasso with get context dot load details get avatar URL into I don't know why I can't type today. Avatar, and that should be it. And finally return convert view. So it took a little bit longer to write than usual, but that is our awesome adapter. So if you want to pause the video and finish writing that, you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to move on into our fragments layout. And our fragments our fragment layout is going to be interesting because there is going to be one difference that we'll have. So open up our resource folder, our layout folder, and open up fragment, in this case, fragment contacts. And in fragment contacts, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the root layout to be a frame layout. Now, then I'm going to remove the orientation attribute because it's no longer needed. Also note that you're going to want to change the beginning and the end tag at the same time. However, the newer version of Android Studio does that for you. So as I change one tag, the other tag changes too. So that's really cool. Okay, so we have our frame layout, we have our list view, and next up what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a text view. And this text view will be interesting. He's going to have a width and a height of match parent and match parent, but what's interesting is he's going to have a gravity of center. Not a layout gravity, but a gravity of center. And he's going to have a background of E0F7FA. And he's going to have a text of you have no contacts. A text style. Let's see. No, a text size of 18. And a color of black, so 000. And that should be about it. And we'll go ahead and give him, we'll give him a visibility of gone. So what this text view is going to do is we'll show this text view if you have no contacts. And that's going to be handled automatically by the list view. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that as well. So next up, let's go ahead and put in our progress frame. So our frame layout with the match parent, ID of fragment contacts progress frame, a background of B2EBF2, and a clickable of true, and otherwise I don't care. Then we'll have a progress bar in the center with the wrap content width and height, indeterminate only set to true, and a layout gravity of center. So we have a nice little progress bar. And that's it for our layout. So if you want to pause the video and write that out, that'll be, let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. All right, so now let's go ahead and move on to our fragment class. So I'm going to come up here to fragments. I'm going to come up here to contacts fragment, and we're just going to write this out real quick. So he's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to have a private user details adapter, a private view progress frame. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say our adapter equals new user details adapter, passing in cast to base activity, get activity. And let's go ahead and get our progress view, our progress frame. So I'll say progress frame equals find view by ID, or view.find view by ID, r.id progress frame. And we're going to be doing fragment contacts progress frame. And then let's go, I guess, go ahead and do our list view. So list view equals cast to list view. View, find view by ID, r.id, fragment contacts list. And for our list view, let's go ahead and set the empty view. So setting the empty view is going to be a view that'll be shown and hidden if the list is ever empty. And the empty view in this case is going to be view.getView, or sorry, get view, find view by ID, r.id, fragment contacts, and I forgot to give that text view a name, so I'm going to call him empty list. So what I'm going to do there is I went ahead and I created this, or I am using this ID that doesn't exist, and then I'm going to jump back into the layout, and for this text view, I'm just going to copy and paste that ID that I added in here, and everything will be awesome. Okay, so now our text view has an ID. Now we can reference it from the fragment itself, so that code will now work. As you can see, the error is now gone. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say listview.setAdapter, then listview.set on item click listener, and I'm going to set it to this. Now, we don't currently inherit or implement that interface yet, so it'll be an error for a moment here, but we'll fix that here in a second. And I think that should be about it. So now let's go ahead and say bus.post, and we're going to request our contacts. So I'm going to say contacts.get contacts request. And we'll go ahead and pass in false for include pending contacts. So what this code does is, again, this sends the request to get the contacts. Now let's go ahead and implement the click listener, I guess. Well, yeah, I guess. Let's go ahead and click, just go down the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the squigglies with the keyboard cursor, hit Alt-Enter, and then select Make Contacts Fragment Implement, and then hit Enter. And now we have our onItemClick method. Now, on the onItemClick, what I want to have happen is I want to get the user details, then I want to open up that particular contact's information. And if you recall, we already have a contact activity right here that I want to launch when you click on a contact. So I'm going to say user details equals adapter get item position. Then I'm going to create an intent. I'm going to say intent equals new intent, and for the context we'll pass in get activity. For the class we'll pass in contact activity dot class. Then I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to say intent dot put extra, and I'm going to say put extra contact activity dot extra user details. Now this code won't work right now, but we'll make the code work in a moment here after we finish this fragment. And the reason what's not working is that currently the user details class doesn't implement the required interface for packaging it up as an extra parameter to a activity. We will stub that out in this video to make this code compile, and then later we're going to have a video about how serialization works in Android. So after we do that, we can go ahead and start the activity. So start activity intent. Now let's go ahead and handle the event when we receive our contacts. So I'm going to say subscribe public void on contacts response, and I'll say contact dot get, or contacts dot what did I call that? Get contacts response. No, not request. Response. First thing, of course, I'm going to do is response dot show error toast. Get activity for the context. So if there was an error, we will show it as a toast. And at this point, what I want to do is, actually, before I do that, I want to go ahead and say scheduler.invokeOnResume contacts get contacts response.class new runnable. So I'm going to be wrapping this entire method inside of a scheduler.invokeOnResume call, so that this code will only execute after we get back to this activity if this activity was at all paused. I do have to make sure that my parameter right here is marked as final, because we're going to be using this parameter inside of a closure. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my progress view. So I'm going to say progress frame dot animate alpha 0 with or set duration 250 with end action new runnable. And the end action, of course, is just going to say progress frame dot set visibility view dot gone, and then we'll say dot start. So that'll make the progress view go away. Then I'm going to say adapter.clear, and then adapter.addAll, passing in response.contacts. So, yeah. Now what I want to do is, before we go ahead and fix up our on-item click here, I want to go ahead and create an options menu, because I want there to be an option here to send a friend request, to add a new friend or contact. So to do that, I'm going to come down here to make a new method, and I'm going to say override method, and I'm going to do onCreateOptions menu and hit enter. And then for this, I'm simply going to say inflator.inflate r.menu.fragment contacts and comma menu. Now that menu doesn't exist yet. We'll create that in a second here, but let's go ahead and create our handler for the button I want to build first. So the handler is going to be alt insert override on options item selected. And for on options item selected, we're going to default by returning the super implementation, and we're going to add our own little bit of code here by saying if item.getID equals r.id fragment contacts underscore menu underscore add contact. Then I'm going to say start activity new intent get activity for the context, and then add contact activity.class for the activity, and then return true. So again, this is all stuff we've talked about before, so there's not a whole lot else to say about this particular code. There is one thing, of course, to point out, something that I almost forgot, but I actually pointed this out earlier when we talked about it, that I typically, or that I can easily forget this on occasion, and that is I need to, because I now have an options menu on my fragment, I need to make sure that I invoke the set has options menu at the top. So let's do that. I'm going to scroll all the way up here to the top on the onCreate view, and before I even inflate my view, I'm going to say set has options menu, passing in true. So make sure you add this to your onCreate view method, because otherwise Android isn't going to know that your fragment has a options menu, and it isn't even going to bother to invoke the methods that create the options menu. So yeah. Before we go ahead and fix this code right here, I want to go ahead and implement this menu. Because the menu is pretty simple, we only have one item in it. So I'm going to hit Alt-Insert, or Alt-Enter, and then say Create Menu Resource, and then we'll hit Enter. And we now have an awesome stubbed out menu resource. Now our single item here is simply going to be item. We'll give him an ID of the same ID that we had already assumed in the contacts fragment Java class. So we're going to say ID fragment contacts menu add contact. We'll give him a icon of @drawable icy action user add. We'll give him a title of add contact, and we'll give him an app : show as action equals always. Of course, when we do app : and we haven't defined it yet, we need to go ahead and hit Alt-Enter to add the appropriate XML namespace here at the top of the root element. All right, so now that we have that done, we can come back here to contacts fragment, and pretty much everything is done here on our contacts fragment. The only thing really left to do at this point is to fix this code right here. This code's really easy to fix. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the user details class by control-clicking on him. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say implements parsable. So Parcel able. And then I'm going to do that, so make sure that we get that import statement. Then I'm going to hit Alt Enter so that these two methods appear, our describe contents and our write to parcel. Now, the next thing that I need to do will look a little weird, but if we don't do this, Android might get really confused. And that is, we need to, at the bottom of this class, or it really doesn't matter where we put this code, we need to write a private or public static final creator of type user details, and it needs to be specifically spelled creator in all caps, and we're going to instantiate it right here, new creator of user details. And for this, what we're going to do on our create from parcel, I'm simply going to return a new instantiation of user details, passing in 0, false, null, null, null. And then, of course, we have to put a semicolon here at the last curly. So all of this code right here is required because we're now marking this user details class as parsable. We haven't talked about parsables yet, but in a nutshell, it's basically a way to serialize and deserialize Java objects in Android. We'll be talking about how to implement these methods later, but by writing this code, our code now compiles when we try to stuff a user details into an intent, which is exactly what we're doing in the contacts fragment class. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play. And we should see this working. So let's go ahead and give Gradle some time to get its act together here. Maybe wait some more time. Maybe pause the video. And we're back. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Bring my virtual machine over here. And we have our contacts, and check that out. All of that just worked. So let's go ahead and click on a contact. Now, we get an exception here. It probably has to do with something about me not implementing the parsables. I never declared contact activity in my Android manifest. That's why that threw an exception there. That was a good thing I tested that on video, so that I can show you guys that making this mistake is actually incredibly common. So inside of the Android manifest.xml, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add, doesn't matter where, I'm simply going to say open up a new activity, and I'm going to say contact activity. And I think I also don't have add contact activity added either. So I'm going to open up a new activity and say add contact activity. And that'll be that. Now let's go ahead and hit play. So make sure you add all those to your Android manifest. You should, that error will happen quite frequently with this code, or with Android development in general. So let's go ahead and run this, and we get our contact activity. So that's pretty exciting. Then we have our add contact activity too, which is pretty exciting. Now there's one more thing I want to test real fast before we move on from this video, and that is temporarily I'm going to come into the in-memory contact service, and up here on the get contacts method for the post delayed, I'm going to give it a 5-second delay, so 5,000 milliseconds, and hit play. And here's why I'm doing that. I want to test to make sure that our response, our API response, is still being read by our activity when we switch to another one. So watch it. It's now, remember, it's still loading the contacts right now, right? It's still loading the contacts, and at this point, the contacts now should be loaded, but that activity is invisible. So when I hit the back button, my expected behavior is the list view will be populated. So hit back, and check that out. So, as you can see, our API calls are still being read and understood by activities, even if they aren't on the foreground. And that's really what I want, because to make that code behave differently requires so much additional boilerplate. Doing this sort of event-based thing really makes it easy to handle these sort of cases. And if the activity did get destroyed when we got back, what would happen? Well, it would just resend the API request, because that's the best thing you can do, because effectively at that point the information was lost. Now you could implement a producer in auto for this, but that would require additional complexity. I think right now we have a great balance between flexibility and the amount of code that we have to write. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps this video up. And it pretty much wraps up our contacts view. So we definitely still have to implement our add contact view, and we definitely still have to implement our show contact view. But for right now, I think we're pretty much done with the contacts list, and we can move on to our next top level activity.